Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Sorry about the late drop today, folks, but I was up at Red Rock Canyon getting some miles in, doing some work, preparing for some of the bigger adventures that I have planned this summer. And the ultimate goal is to eventually summit Mount Everest. And those of you who know me personally know that that's been a goal of mine for quite some time. And it's something that I've been working towards for a very, very long time. But it's very expensive, it's very time consuming, and it's a lot of, you have to give a lot to get a lot in most instances in life, and this is no different. There's a lot of time that goes into it, a lot of logistical planning, and of course, like everything else, a lot of money. We're talking upwards of $65,000, $70,000 to climb this mountain. So each year I continue to keep myself in as good of shape as possible by all of these other adventures I go on. I've climbed places like Mount Rainier. I've climbed in the Rocky Mountains. I've climbed in all over the country basically at this point, and outside of the country in some instances. But the ultimate goal, the most important thing for me, is to eventually summit Mount Everest. And that's why you'll see I post a lot of pictures of my outdoor adventures on like Twitter and stuff like that. And that's the ultimate goal is to eventually get to Everest. But all of the adventures that I go on now, each one of them are just as spectacular in their own way, right? Every single time I'm out there, it's a new adventure, something new to see, something new to explore. Things always look different no matter how many times I go out. And I find it cathartic. Some people go to church, right? For me, those mountains are my cathedral. When I'm there, I'm the happiest and the most centered that I possibly could be. So anyway, I won't ramble about that much longer. I'm sure most of you don't give two damn F's about my mountain climbing adventures, right? So today, what we're going to do here on the show, we're going to talk about the Kennedy School at Harvard and how the fellows who are linked to the people in question, we're talking the Dubins and the Wexners of the world, how they're presented with a bit of a dilemma, right? The people who have been endowed, the people who have accepted the scholarships and the names of those people, now they have a bit of a moral dilemma on their hands. So we're going to jump into this article from the Harvard Crimson, and the headline is, "For Kennedy School Fellows, Epstein-linked donors present a moral dilemma." This article was authored by Michelle G. Kurilla and Emma R. Schumer. When students are selected for the Dubin Graduate Fellowship for Emerging Leaders at the Harvard Kennedy School Center for Public Leadership, they make a commitment to effect positive change on the world. Yeah, the Glenn Dubin certainly did that, huh? He's just such a positive guy, such a great influence on the world. The guy's an absolute POS in my opinion. The guy is an absolute piece of shit, in my opinion. What we've heard about him from Virginia, what we've heard about him with the Swedish girl in his kitchen and his living room, the creepy ties to Jeffrey Epstein, what more do you need? This guy is obviously a creepy SOB. Endowed by billionaire donor Glenn R. Dubin in 2010, the fellowship offers financial scholarships and a co-curricular program to a handful of students each year who have shown strong character, academic excellence, and the ability to thrive and lead in the face of adversity, according to the fellowship's website. I mean, for real, you can't write this stuff. So all of the things that Glenn Dubin is not, that's what he's supporting with his fellowship. So go be everything that I'm not, please. Because Glenn Dubin is none of those things. He doesn't have strong character. Academic excellence, I have no idea. Maybe he was smart in school, I have no idea. The ability to thrive and lead in the face of adversity? Well, you didn't leave or thrive in the face of adversity. You took a step back and you were forced out of your company. You left your financial company, your investment firm, and you're on the run. So what do you mean? Ability to thrive and lead in the face of adversity. You don't have any of these character traits. This year's incoming and outgoing classes of Dubin Fellows expected to focus their efforts on academics and extracurriculars, working to fulfill that mission. Instead, some found themselves investing outsized energy into a campaign to sever their fellowship's ties to its benefactor, who maintained a decades-long rapport with the deceased financier, pedophile, and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, imagine being one of these kids who worked really hard for one of these fellowships, one of these grants, one of these sort of endowments, and then you get it after all of that hard work, and it happens to be from Glenn Dubin, and all of this starts to occur, and now you have to answer questions about how you're related to Dubin, etc., etc. Again, people like Dubin do not care about the fallout. They don't care about any of it. They can go home and swim around in their billions like Scrooge McDuck and just ride everything out and wait for the storm to pass. These kids, on the other hand, well, now their name is forever attached to Glenn Dubin, and via Glenn Dubin attached to Jeffrey Epstein. I know if I was one of these kids' parents, I would be so mad by this kind of shit. None of us expected to have a year filled with scandal and a year filled with this level of internal organizing, Dubin Fellow and Master in Public Policy candidate Rebecca M. Murr said. We're just a few of many, many students who are incredibly concerned and upset about HKS, Harvard Kennedy School's, ties to donors who are closely tied to Epstein. Dubin is not the only donor to the center who had a relationship with Epstein. Billionaire Leslie H. Wexner, who also endows a fellowship at the center, engaged Epstein as a financial advisor beginning in the late 1980s. Boy, that is just, talk about just scratching the surface, huh? Les Wexner is so much more to Jeffrey Epstein than just a financial advisor, just a money man. That is not what their relationship was. If you really look at their relationship, they were much closer. I'm talking Sith level master and apprentice type shit. All right? Darth Sidious and Darth Vader kind of nonsense in my opinion. And anyone who lets Wexner off the hook, anybody who does not ask the hard questions, anybody who does not hold him up to the same standard that we'd hold up anyone else to, well, I don't even know what to say to you. Like John McClane would say in Die Hard, if you're not part of the effing solution, you're part of the effing problem. Roughly a dozen Kennedy School students, including 4 current Dubin Fellows, denounced the Kennedy School's support for donors who had relationships with Epstein in interviews with the Crimson. Many also criticized the Kennedy School for not acknowledging those ties or for inadequately addressing students' concerns. And again, if you pay this money to go to a school like this, you get a scholarship to a school like Harvard, you expect to walk onto that campus and you expect it to be no nonsense, no frills, no BS. I'm here to learn. I'm here to get my $500,000 worth. And I know if it was my kid and I was coming out of my pocket, that's exactly what I would expect. But no. Now these kids have to deal with all of this nonsense. They have to deal with all of the Jeffrey Epstein fallout, all because Harvard is such a den of scum and villainy. Students who receive funding from the donors said Harvard has put them in a thorny situation. They now weigh the value of a Harvard education, which some would not have access to if not for donors' financial support, against their moral opposition to the individuals who provide that funding. It wouldn't even be a question for me, honestly. I would never accept funding from these people. I don't care if it's to go to Harvard or not. I'd go to a different school. I'd find funding somewhere else. If you're getting funding and you're being accepted to Harvard, you will be accepted to other schools that don't have this stink on them. And I know it's unfortunate to have to say that, but it's the truth. I don't even understand how anyone could be comfortable having their kids even loosely related to these people. Several Dubin Fellows characterized the situation as ironic. Alluding to the Kennedy School's description of their fellowship, the fellow said Harvard selected them due to their ability to show leadership when faced with difficult circumstances. But this past year, as students mobilized around ethical concerns about their school's indirect ties to Epstein, they said they believe Harvard itself failed to demonstrate that quality. Again, it's another case of do as I say, not as I do. And we see it not only from financial institutions, we see it from the banks, we see it from politicians, and we see it from just about everybody in a leadership position. All of these people fake the funk. They talk the talk, but never walk the walk. After new information about Epstein's activities began to surface with his July 2019 arrest, reports of Harvard donors' ties to Epstein sparked a tumultuous year at the Center for Public Leadership. After Epstein was convicted of procuring sex with a minor in Florida state court in 2008, he and Dubin continue to maintain friendly ties. Yeah, so friendly that Epstein was invited to Thanksgiving dinner at the Dubin's house after he got out of prison, with Dubin's little kids around. In my opinion, Dubin has a few screws loose. In 2010, Dubin donated $5 million to the Kennedy School to establish his eponymous fellowship at the Center for Public Leadership. Wexner and his wife, Abigail S. Wexner, meanwhile, are the founding benefactors of the center. In addition to financially backing the center's Wexner Israel Fellowship, Wexner donated more than $42 million to the Kennedy School prior to 2012. One building at the Kennedy School is named for him. Since then, he too has come under scrutiny for his ties to Epstein. Again, just his ties to Epstein, huh? That's it? Nothing else? The legacy media is an absolute dumpster fire. I don't know how many times I have to say it, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but I mean, come on. All it takes is just a little scratch beneath the surface to see that the ties between Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein go much deeper than his financial advisor. Darth Sidious, Darth Vader. That's the kind of evil we're talking about with these two, in my opinion. Epstein served as Wexner's financial advisor, facilitating a donation that funded the construction of Harvard Hillel. Wexner was one of Epstein's only known clients. Wexner has maintained that he cut ties with Epstein, following the latter's 2007 arrest. Thomas Davies, a spokesperson for Wexner, wrote as much in an emailed statement to the Crimson. Well, you can guarantee that any statement being made by the Wexner camp is a lie, in my opinion. Anything that they talk about is BS. They've never answered any of the hard questions. They've obfuscated, and they've kicked the can down the road in hopes that the public would lose interest in this case. Mr. Wexner has condemned Jeffrey Epstein's abhorrent behavior in the strongest possible terms and severed all ties with him more than a decade ago, he wrote. Yeah, okay, well, how much did Jeffrey Epstein supposedly steal from you, Mr. Wexner? Why don't you donate that money to a survivors fund and let the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein get pieced off? Put your money where your mouth is. But again, we don't see that from these people. It's all talk and never any walk. Earlier this year, the New York Times reported Wexner failed to address inappropriate conduct and a culture of misogyny inside L Brands, the parent company of Victoria's Secret. Following the reports, Wexner stepped down as chairman and chief operating officer nearly 6 decades after he started the retail company. Think about that for a minute, folks. It's because of your pressure, all of your pressure, that this disgusting man who had been at the helm for 60 years was forced to step down. And I know it's not an indictment. I know it's not a prosecution, but it's a start. And to get where you're going, you always have to have a starting spot, right? So here, that's the starting spot. And the destination is all of them being locked up. But every great adventure starts with one step. Kennedy School students said in interviews they were frustrated to learn about donor controversies through the media, while their school's administration remained largely silent on the issue. Though both Wexner and Dubin have denounced Epstein, students continue to protest those donors' relationships to Harvard. Throughout the past academic year, Dubin's fellows entered into private conversations with senior administrators at the Kennedy School and Center to discuss their concerns regarding donor relations, according to 4 fellows. What needs to happen is no more quote-unquote internal investigations. It needs to be an independent group that looks into this kind of thing, and that way they're not biased and we get basically an unredacted report, right? The real. Not the stuff that they're going to hide because it's an internal report and they don't want to look bad. An actual outside independent group doing this. Dubin Fellow and Master of Public Policy candidate Catherine Miller characterized those conversations as frustrating. She said she was not at liberty to disclose details of the meetings due to administrators' requests that they be kept confidential. These people love to keep shit confidential, right? They think if they keep it confidential and hidden with NDAs and all that other jazz, that you'll never hear about it. Well, they're wrong. This day and age, it's gonna leak. People are going to hear about it. The center and the Kennedy School have not publicly acknowledged their donor ties to Epstein or students' concerns. Of course they haven't. They're a bunch of cowards. Kennedy School spokesperson James F. Smith wrote in an emailed statement that Wexner and Dubin's financial contributions have benefited the Kennedy School. He also noted that Kennedy School Dean Douglas W. Elmendorf and Center for Public Leadership Director Wendy R. Sherman have participated in discussions with Kennedy School affiliates, including students, about the donations. Well, pack it in, folks. No more investigations are needed from us. We don't need to comment anymore. They're having discussions. They're including the students, and it's about the donations. So the rest of us should just shut up about things. That's what they would want. That's what they want us to do. But in reality, that's never going to happen. Their donations have enabled Harvard Kennedy School to provide hundreds of student scholarships, hire additional faculty, and transform the physical campus for the 21st century learning, Smith wrote. This support has significantly advanced our mission of educating future generations of principled and effective public leaders. How tone deaf. I mean, are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me right now? This guy is an absolute clown. Wow. For them, it's all about the money. They don't care about Wexner, and they don't care about Dubin or anyone like that. If they had it their way, they would still accept money from people like this. They just keep it on the hush. Though the Kennedy School continues to argue in favor of the gift's utility, students have questioned the status of the school's current relationships with their donors in light of recent events. In February, Harvard removed Dubin's and Wexner's names from a university website listing the members of the center's advisory council. Wexner co-chaired the advisory council with his wife, whose name has also been removed. Dubin's name was also scratched from the Kennedy School's Dean Executive Board. And again, for people like this to lose board seats and to have to step back from companies and to have egg on their face, etc., it's the worst thing that could happen to them besides going to prison. They have plenty of money to lose. They don't care if they lose a lawsuit and got to pay something out. But when they lose their so-called credibility, their public facade is broken, and people really see that the king really isn't wearing any clothes, well, that, my friends, is a big problem to these so-called power brokers. At the time, Kennedy School students said they were unsure what the disappearance of the donors' names from the boards meant about Harvard's relationship to them. A Kennedy School spokesperson told the Crimson in March that Dubin and Wexner's departures were routine. Of course it was. So folks, you see what's going on here, right? You can read between the lines. Harvard is still covering up what they did. They're still making excuses about it, and they're not contrite. They don't have any compassion for the survivors. They don't care. Around the same time, the center sent an email to fellowship applicants encouraging them to vet the donors who fund their prospective programs. Several Dubin fellows also said this academic year marked the first time Dubin did not arrange an in-person meeting with the students enrolled in his fellowship. They added that they believe the Epstein controversy precipitated the change. Hell yeah, it did. Look, don't let anybody tell you that it wasn't the pressure that you put on over Epstein that has all of these people on their heels. It wasn't the legacy media. It wasn't Julie K. Brown. It was you. All of the people that are enraged about what's going on and running around with their hair on fire daily over the treatment of not only the survivors, but over the treatment of the justice system as a whole. Still, Dubin spokesperson Davidson Golden wrote in an emailed statement to the Crimson that the Dubins remain committed to the fellowship. The Dubin Graduate Fellowship for Emerging Leaders was established over a decade ago and remains an important focus of the Dubins' philanthropy, he wrote. Current fellows said they understand that the fellowship's funding may dry up within the next 2 years. A spokesperson for Dubin did not respond to a question asking whether Dubin will provide another donation to continue the fellowship when it runs out of money. Why would you want him to? As Harvard, why would you want more money from this guy? You're telling me that there aren't any other rich people that would love to give these people an endowment? And furthermore, how much is Harvard pulling in anyway right now? I'm sure it's in the billions. Several Dubin Fellows said revelations about their donors' relationship with Epstein have had a negative impact on them personally. They also criticized the Kennedy School for not being forthcoming about their donors' ties to Epstein. Dubin Fellow and Master in Public Policy candidate Mike Yeeps said that as a survivor of sexual assault, Harvard's relationships to donors with Epstein's ties have created a very difficult dilemma internally for him. What's been very difficult for me is navigating this dichotomy of being a survivor myself and then having the benefit of a full ride, but a full ride given to me by someone who, regardless of whether or not we know what happened with Dubin specifically, has had a relationship with Epstein, who was a convicted sex offender, Yep said. I could definitely see that kind of moral balancing act, right? You're a survivor and then you get this endowment from Glenn Dubin and he has all of these questions swirling around him, etc., etc. It must be a gut shot for this guy. Yeeps added that the onus should be on Harvard, not him or any other individual student, to vet donors 100%. It is up to Harvard to vet these donors. Don't put that on these kids, these students. Let them focus on school. Let them focus on what they're there for. It's not their job to vet their donors, Harvard. The responsibility to find donors who can support those students, one of whom I am, is Harvard's and not mine as an individual, he said. It is their responsibility to routinely vet donors and seek out new donors when questionable situations arise. Again, people want to donate to Harvard. Come on, folks. Dubin's relationship with Epstein has led Dubin Fellows to conceal their fellowship's connections with its benefactor. Imagine how it makes me so aggravated that Harvard would still be in bed with this guy. Dubin Fellow and Master in Public Policy candidate Joshua Baltodano said he has updated his LinkedIn profile to omit mention of Dubin from the fellowship title. I definitely don't tell people I'm a Dubin Fellow anymore, he said. It is disappointing to be referred to as a Dubin Emerging Leader Fellow because my emerging leadership didn't come from supporting partnerships with sex offenders, Yeep said. It came from being a survivor who has fought for justice. Man, I feel for this Mr. Yeeps. This is a shit situation to be in, man. You have your dreams and your goals all right there in front of you, and then to find out that Dubin is such a sicko, that Dubin had such a relationship with Epstein, and add to, on top of all of that, what he's being accused of by Virginia Roberts, man, I can't even imagine. Miller said she believes the Kennedy School failed to show leadership from the time media reports surfaced of Dubin's ties to Epstein. We found out not through the Center for Public Leadership, not through Glenn Dubin, but through watching the news just like everyone else, Miller said. I think that has mirrored largely how the administration, foreshadowed how the administration was going to see and handle this issue, and that they have not really been proactive in identifying this as a problem or an issue that's very salient to us and merits our involvement. Because the university thinks it's a big joke. Harvard University is a disgrace. They're an absolute disgrace. I don't take anything that comes out of Harvard seriously at this point, and it's unfortunate because there are a lot of very smart, very intelligent leaders of tomorrow within their walls. But what sort of education are they getting? What sort of people are they being brought around? This is almost too much, folks. A seat at the table. At the center of student outcry against ties to Wexner and Dubin has been uncertainty regarding what vetting process, if any, Harvard conducts of its donors. Until recently, the university's guidelines for prospective donors were shrouded in secrecy, but a recent report released on May 1st shed new light on the university's ties to Epstein and its gift policies, and has prompted Harvard to develop more stringent guidelines. So why was it shrouded in secrecy in the first place? Right? It should be pretty straightforward. You're a donor, we're a school, here's the paperwork, have a great day, sir. Why does everything have to be shrouded in mystery? Why does everything have to be obfuscated when it comes to these people? Nothing is ever on the up and up, nothing is ever as it seems, and that is why you must read between the lines. University President Lawrence S. Bacow, who has received that letter from Dr. DeLay, requested a review of Epstein's donations in September 2019 after a partial financial review revealed he made significant donations to Harvard. Led by Harvard's Office of the General Counsel and the outside law firm Foley Hoag, the full review found Epstein donated around $9.1 million between 1998 and 2008, and that Harvard did not take any gifts from Epstein following his 2008 conviction. I don't buy that either. How many Gucci bags were dropped off? How many Versace bags were dropped off stuffed with cash? Because remember, we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein here, money manipulator, money launderer, money trafficker, human trafficker, and all-around sleazebag. The report also furnished a set of recommendations the university will act upon immediately, according to Bacall. One of those recommendations states that its gift policy committee, a group of faculty and administrators tasked with reviewing prospective donations, should create a comprehensive, university-wide process for vetting donors and share it with faculty and staff. Yeah, that might be a good idea, right? What is this, national security? What are you guys worried that Yale's going to come over and steal your policy or something? Stop it, Harvard. Just stop. That process, the report recommends, would include identifying triggering criteria to avoid certain gifts and donors. The criteria might include the gift size, a donor's lack of prior connection to Harvard, any known concerns about a prospective donor's actions, including criminal record, and any negative information found in the news media, the report reads. Neither Dubin nor Wexner are mentioned in the report, which focused on Epstein's direct donations to Harvard. Yeah, of course not. Epstein's gone. They don't mind smashing that cash cow, but they're not going to slap Dubin in the face. They're not going to slap Wexner in the face. Of course not. Those are cash cows, and they can't get rid of them because I'm sure on the back end, Harvard is still profiting from their relationships with these people. Though the review also examined gifts Epstein directed and facilitated, the final report did not detail every gift made to the university in which donors may have had an association to Epstein. Of course it didn't. They used a friendly law firm to look into them, to do an investigation into themselves, and this is the result. It's no different than when you see the Inspector General doing an investigation. It never has any teeth, right? You're investigating yourself, the guys you're playing golf with on the weekends, for God's sake. Several Kennedy School students said they hope to see more student involvement in the drafting of donor guidelines. I think we would love to see greater student involvement in the gift policy committee and the creation of a robust gifts policy. Murr, one of the Dubin fellows, said, I see that as coming out of this report, but I do not see any mechanism for student involvement in that process. Miller also said she believes students should have a voice in university decisions regarding donor guidelines. She said students would bring an important moral perspective to those discussions, whereas administrators might prioritize the financial prosperity of their programs. That's a great point. Let's mix it up. Let's have student and faculty involved. I don't see what the problem is. I do, but Harvard obviously doesn't want to relinquish the power, right? That is really what it comes down to. It boils down to the power. And in any institution like this, it's all about the power. Those in power never want to relinquish it to those who do not have power. And that's the age-old struggle that we find ourselves in the world, never mind at Harvard, but it's the battle that we find ourselves in against the elite. They are never going to cede this power willingly. We're going to have to force it out of their hands. I think that students can really bring a moral standard to it, she said. We're the Dubin fellows, that is part of our lives forever. We are forever, to a degree, separated from Jeffrey Epstein. I think just having that seat at the table when it comes to making these decisions can go a long way, she added. Ultimately, Miller said she would like to see Harvard more fully confront its relationship to those tied to Epstein and to Epstein himself. Epstein used Harvard ties to basically absolve himself of the crime that he had committed and ingratiate himself back into society, she said. That was his play, and he used Harvard to do it. Not just Harvard, he used all of these people to do it. All of those people who he was shaking hands with on the wall in Zorro Ranch while he was raping Jane Doe 15, you're all enablers. you're all complicit, okay? Anybody that was piggybacked and used as a vehicle and a conduit for him to get back into so-called civil, polite society, you're part of the problem. She argued through the Dubin Fellowship that place still may be happening. Harvard needs to reckon the extent to which we were used, to better the reputation of Jeffrey Epstein, she added. You know, look, the Harvard Crimson has been doing some pretty good work when it comes to covering this case as far as the Harvard connections go. These are the students that are on campus, these are the editors that are on campus, and these are the journalists of tomorrow. And hopefully they're getting a lesson here in this Jeffrey Epstein case, and they're learning a lot about who their friends and who the enemies are. And the enemies, my friends, are the so-called elite and their minions in the dumpster fire that we call the legacy media. If you'd like to contact me, you could do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, folks, I'll be back later on with the Daily Drop and all of the other good stuff. Until then, hope you all have an amazing day.